Welcome to the All Heart Barbell Basement Gym. My name is Mike. I am an athlete, coach, and referee in Canada Powerlifting, and I'm here today to talk to you about the IPF's Rulebook changes for 2026. There's a lot of interesting things in here, and some people are rightfully a little upset about it, but honestly, this is just the way of life. The rulebook's constantly being updated on a yearly basis, and it's up to us to just kind of adapt, know what it is they're looking for us as athletes, and go forward from there. People that are upset with the rule changes, although I do understand what they're upset about, this is kind of just the way of life in powerlifting. We're constantly figuring things out, and some of the rule updates, sure, I might agree are a little bit silly, but in general, I think they have good intentions, and they genuinely want what is best for the sport here. So we are going to just kind of go through all of this and cover what they've updated. So for anyone who doesn't know where to find this is on the IPF website here. You can download the official rule book, and then it pulls up this document here. It's about a 50-page document. For me, I'm going to cover all of the new stuff here, so it'll all be highlighted in red, and that's why I'm scrolling by so far. Here will be our first red one here. So let's see. Final selection submitted no later than from 21 to 30 days before the date of the championship must be made for those nominated 60 days before the date of the championships. So all this means is that people are going to have more time to prepare for what the meet day is going to look like. 21 days is a pretty short period of time to get referees lined up, coaches, athletes to get travel plans picked out once they know what day and time and session they're lifting in. So the extra 9 days, I think, is generally a good thing. I think people are going to be happy to have those 9 days. Not really the most exciting rule change, but it is a good one. Each lifter must receive a participation medal, memento, from the meet organizer. This is at international championships. So if you go to a local meet, national meet, even Westerns, you're not likely to get a participation medal, which is fine, especially at the local level. There's no need for that. When people are traveling internationally, hours to go to your meet, I think it's nice for them to take something home with them, hang them up on the wall, get to tell all their friends and family for years to come about the time they competed at an international meet. I don't think there's any harm in someone getting something just for showing up to that type of meet. They've done a lot of work to get there, so that one makes sense. Okay, I'll just keep on going here. No red, no red, no red. Yeah, okay, here we go. I know there's some updates here in the bench press. Okay, so in the bench press, a blue infraction card, failure to lock out arms before the start of the command. This one I've actually seen. I've had a recent competitor in one of the lifts, in one of the meets that I was refereeing, actually do this. One of the referees that I was with caught it, and I actually missed it. So I have seen this. You can tell I'm from Canada because we got a curling broom here for our examples here. But basically, when you're starting your bench press, those elbows need to be locked out, and there's certain circumstances where someone might have a weak elbow. So they just need to start with locked out elbows, similar to the squat. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That makes sense to me. Okay, next. This one, utilizing upper body thrust to initiate upward movement of the bar from the chest. This one's a little bit tougher, and some people are a little worried about this one. Rules are best when they're very clear, and when there's any gray area to them, that's where they become challenging, because referees can be inconsistent, and that ultimately is frustrating for the athletes, which is totally understandable. Utilizing upper body thrust. So this is kind of that heaving, letting that bar sink in to your chest and then propelling it up. Lots of people have done this for a very long time, so I don't necessarily think this is going to be easy for people to figure out. And from talking to a lot of other referees, I've reached out and talked to a few other folks about this at this point in time. The reason that they wanted to do this is because of the elbow and shoulder rule, to avoid those excessive arching that people was doing in the bench press. And what they've found to kind of circumvent it is they were collapsing their chest. That would drop their elbows below their shoulder joint, and they'd still be able to press up and get a good lift. And this right here will prevent that. The problem with that subjectively is what is an upper body thrust? I don't know if I'm 100% certain how to define an upper body thrust. Good news is, like I said, I've been in touch with the other referees. I'm a provincial level referee, hey, so I'm still much lower down the chain. So they're going to do some workshops with us. We'll hop on some calls. We'll all get on the same page as best as we can, and we'll go from there and see how it goes. But that one I do think will be a little bit of a learning curve. And moving on. Nothing there. Okay, this one's just a little bit with equipment. It is permitted to wear knee sleeves over a long-legged singlet, but not under the singlet. So if you're wearing long-legged singlets, most singlets will cut off above the knee, but there are some available that can go all the way down to the ankle. It is allowed, but not mandatory, to wear deadlift socks over the long-legged singlet. So there's already that protection there with those long legs. You don't have to wear your socks, but if you choose to wear socks, you are able to do so. And that is what those long-legged singlets look like. So knee sleeves got to be over top. Socks, if you do choose to wear them, also need to be over top. Okay. One rule I'll just point out while we're here, okay, no compression underwear. I get a lot of people at meet showing up with sacks, polyester, different types of polyester underwear. Not allowed. Also weird that we have to check that you're wearing the appropriate type of underwear, but that just comes with the sport. Okay, shoes or boots. Shoes must be properly fastened, laces tied, or Velcro straps secured when the lifter is on the platform. Won't affect most people, but there are people out there that prefer a looser shoe. They might not be tying their shoes. This might be a safety concern for them at the IPF. So you have untied shoes, you take a step back, trip over your shoelace. I could see that being an issue. I get why someone might want a looser fitting shoe, but I think it's pretty fair to require shoes to be tied up. You see that in other sports all the time. Athletes are permitted to receive personal assistance in the application of their knee sleeves. Okay, so that's also kind of a backtrack, actually. So what they did previously was they put in a rule that said you weren't allowed any assistance putting on your knee sleeves. And that kind of created a gray area where you're micromanaging. Hey, no, you can't assist them with their knee sleeves. Are you allowed lubricants? Are you allowed high socks to help get these knee sleeves on? It wasn't super easy to officiate, so they've kind of backtracked and gone back to, you know what, you can just have people help you with the knee sleeves. I don't actually think that super tight knee sleeves are that great. Like, I do want my knee sleeves to be tight, but so tight that I can't get them on myself. I don't even know why you'd want that. How are you going to be training with those? You aren't always going to be able to be training with somebody. So if you can't get your knee sleeves on without somebody else, I don't see how that's in your best interest, honestly. But moving right along. Okay, inspection of personal equipment. Athletes are permitted to receive personal assistance in application of their knee sleeves. That's the same point we just covered. General, necklaces and similar accessories must be properly secured underneath the t-shirt and should not be placed in the mouth at any time when the lifter is approaching the platform. This one is maybe the one that is circulating social media the most, just because popular powerlifters out there do this. Russell Orhe is probably the most popular powerlifter doing this, and people love him. He's a great athlete, and people definitely like to mimic him. So chain outside the singlet goes into the mouth. You're squatting with that necklace in your mouth. A little goofy perhaps, but a safety concern. I don't know if I'd agree with that. However, they've gotten rid of that, and it's not allowed. So that's likely the one that people have heard about the most. You know, I go back and forth with it. I think it's a little goofy to wear jewelry while playing sports. I don't know how that helps you. I feel like that'd just be flopping around. That's not for me. I'm a football fan, an American football fan, and I see, you know, athletes out there all the time wearing chains, and I just don't see how that benefits you out on a sports floor. But in powerlifting, I really don't think it gets in the way all that much. But no necklaces exposed, at least. You are still allowed to wear them, but they do have to be tucked underneath your shirt. So yes, you might be able to see them above your neck here, but they can't be out dangling in front of you. So that should be pretty easy to referee. That should be pretty easy to comply with. Squat. The lifter shall face the front of the platform with the barbell placed horizontally across the shoulders at a height no lower than the posterior deltoid. Hands, thumbs, and fingers must completely grip the bar position in the rack stand and starting position. This is what me personally and selfishly is most upset about. I, for one, squat with a thumbless grip. Okay, so most people might squat thumbs around the bar like this, bars on your back. I squat with a thumbless grip. Okay, I tuck it on the opposite side and wedge it into my traps. That will no longer be allowed, unfortunately. So that is something that I am certainly going to have to adjust to. And then also in that language, height no lower than the posterior deltoid level. So this is really an attempt at limiting or prohibiting that really ultra low bar position. You see these really low bar positions, people might be leaned forward. It looks a little goofy. It's not really what we're looking for in terms of a squat, but it was a way to reduce range of motion and squat heavier, so people were taking advantage of it. The problem I have with this one, other than the fact that I can't use my thumbs anymore, that's selfish, that's something that I'm going to have to figure out on my own time, is the posterior deltoid level. That one is going to be a little tricky because of where we sit as referees looking at the athlete. We're usually more on the front side, so how are we going to see the posterior deltoid and whether or not it's too low? And also, the posterior deltoid has a decent amount of surface area. It has a decent amount of length to it, so no lower than the posterior deltoid? Well, what part of the posterior deltoid? The very bottom of the posterior deltoid? The midline of the posterior deltoid? That language isn't super specific here, so I'm going to be looking forward to getting some more clarification on what they mean by that. But in all, I think we'll get consistent on, you know, what that ultra low bar position looks like and what we are and aren't looking for. So I think that we will be able to figure that out. Selfishly, I'm just upset that I will no longer be able to do a thumbless grip. Okay, the lifter is not allowed to walk through the front of the rack after completion of the lift. So this is something that I do in my home gym here. I'll be squatting in the rack and I'll take a step out through the front of the rack. That's not actually something I do on the platform. When I'm squatting, I rack the bar, I tuck under, and I back away from the rack in powerlifting meets. Mostly because that's where the athlete room is, so back up, head back to where I came from. Now, the issue with it is I think that it feels like they should be able to step out through the front of the rack. Sometimes it's easier. If you get stiff and tight, it's easier to move out through the front of the rack in some cases. But also, it's that excitement factor. I'm not a really amped power lifter. I don't get really riled up when I'm out there. But some people do, and that's totally fine. And I actually think that's exciting. So you make a lift, you step out front, and you can embrace the crowd, you can celebrate, you can show off a little bit of that personality. That won't be allowed anymore. So a little unfortunate, but should be easy enough for people to figure out, you know. Can't do that anymore. Another good part about that was actually that people would be able to get like better pictures, and it's that crowd factor, that excitement factor, that brandability. Powerlifting isn't a very brandable sport, and taking away some of those exciting moments and those interesting moments, I feel like hurts the sport a little bit in that category. But not my circus, not my monkeys, as they say. The lifter is not allowed to enter the rack from the head side of the press rack. So this is kind of in the similar vein. They're really trying to restrict people from using the front of the platform or entering or exiting from that front of the platform. So in the bench pressing, you have to come from the back side, the bench side of the rack. You can't scoop in from the head side. Again, lots of people do this, and who's to say it's wrong other than, well, the IPF, I guess. Some people get into a better arch position with that method. That's just their natural setup, which I feel like maybe they've seen those type of lifters develop a really strong arch scooping in from the head side of the bench press, and that's why they put this rule in place. They also maybe are just trying to stay consistent and keeping people off the front of the platform away from the head judge. That might be more of it, but lifters are going to have to set up their bench press from the bench side of the rack. So if you are one of the people currently scooping in from the head side, let's start practicing your setup from the bench side. His hands, thumbs, and fingers must completely grip the bar positioned in the rack stands with a thumb around the grip. Now, this was already a rule on bench press. You couldn't thumbless grip a bench press. I'd have to go back. Maybe it only required you to do it for the actual action of bench pressing before you got the rack or the press command. So maybe you scoop it out thumbless, you put over your thumbs, you get the start command, and then you go from there. Maybe some people are doing that. I have a hard time believing. I haven't seen that personally, but that's probably what they're trying to prevent there. You know, some of the older rules that came into place last year, the shoulder joint, elbow joint rule. None of that is new. Utilizing upper body thrust to initiate upward movement from the bar from the chest. Okay, we talked about that already. That is a repeat of the above rule. Not allowed to heave out of the bottom of the bench press. Going to be an adjustment. Deadlift. Okay, this is another one. I actually kind of like this one. On completion of the lift, knees shall be locked in a straight position and the front bundle of the deltoid muscle should be placed behind the imaginary projection of the bar. See picture. So there will be a picture that we can look at. This is kind of just to help better define lockout. The only issue I have is front bundle of the deltoid. Never heard of the word bundle before, but that's the word they used. Once the bar has been lowered again on the platform, the lifter is not allowed to step away over the bar towards the front of the platform. Okay, you can see a reoccurring theme. They're really restricting the front of the platform. Okay, and let's cover that rule here that they were talking about. Okay, so in the lockout situation here, the barbell is in front of the front bundle of the shoulder, and there's that clear space there. So I did a little bit of looking into that and just how to explain that. It is sometimes tough to see lockout on certain lifters, especially maybe hook grippers. They actually internally rotate. So, you know, is locking out of your shoulders in space, or is it in the socket? Okay, like is lockout shoulders behind hips, or is lockout shoulders locked out into the shoulder girdle? This is defining the lockout as in space as opposed to shoulders back in the shoulder girdle, which I think is easier to see from a referee's perspective, so I do like that. It's definitely tough to see a person's shoulder moving through their shoulder girdle and being fully locked out and retracted. So I like this rule for sure. What do we got here? Okay, athletes may be permitted to weigh in wearing minimal clothing beyond standard equipment. For example, their lifting singlet and t-shirt, but barefoot, providing that the integrity and accuracy of the weigh-in process are maintained and the weight of the additional clothing does not define and change the body weight category. Okay, so this is good, especially at the local level. You know, people aren't dialing in their weight classes to be within grams of the top end of the weight class. I, for example, compete at 93, and I think I lifted at 87, 88 kilos, so I had lots of room between my weight and the top end of the weight class. Do I really need to strip down to my underwear to weigh in properly? Not really, but under the old rules, I did need to strip down to my underwear at minimum to weigh in. Now, if I want to, I could keep on my shirt, I could keep on my singlet and weigh in all that gear, and it just keeps it expedited. It's easier for the athletes who want to just get into their gear as soon as possible. Maybe they're running short on time, maybe the meet's a little tight in their timelines, so just gives people more time. So I do like that one. Okay. Lifter may only weigh in the category in which he's nominated 30 days prior to the meet. Okay, we talked about that one already. They just upped it from 21 days to 30 days. Where are we here? There are updates in the rule book that are more or less referee rules, which I'm not going to cover here today. I don't think anyone's here as a referee looking to unpack this. I just wanted to cover the stuff that affected the athletes. But there's some more. In competitions where designated international broadcast partners are present, the interval between disciplines can be adjusted. Okay, you know what? If I tried to explain this to you, I'd be making stuff up. I'm a local powerlifting referee, but basically, if you happen to ever be at a meet that's on TV, that's broadcasted, they might adjust the time between squatting, benching, and deadlift so that they can fit it into a broadcast time block. You know, most of us aren't going to be affected by that. Hopefully they give you plenty of notice if you are the people in that category. Okay, not much of changes through this section here. I know there's some more stuff. Athletes' hair should be fixed, braided, or tied back in a way such as not to interfere with the referee's ability to judge the lift. It's a fair rule. Tie up your hair, keep it clean. I don't want it dangling everywhere, making it tougher to see things that we need to be able to see. I don't know how many. Most people with long hair are keeping it fixed in some way, so I haven't actually seen this as being an issue. Maybe there's some extreme situations where someone's hair is so long that it dangles below the hip crease and it's affecting a referee's ability to see hip depth. Not something you come across very, very often. So this is not something that I've ever seen, but nice that they have it written in. Lifters are expected to enter and exit the lifting area or platform in a respectable manner, refraining from discarding their belt on the floor or engaging in any conduct that may be harmful to the integrity of the sport. Okay, we'll go back to the face count for this one. So this one is certainly another tough one. Lifters are expected to enter and exit the lifting platform in a respectable manner. Okay, again, I like clear rules. The rules that leave things open to interpretation are a little bit tougher. What is a respectable manner? Most of us probably have the same idea, but different cultures, different personalities, different weightlifting clubs, they all are going to kind of have a different idea of what is respectful. So is screaming on your way out to the lift to get yourself hyped up not respectful? I don't know. Hopefully not. Refraining from discarding your belt on the floor. Okay, you know what? I kind of don't hate that, you know, like I don't need someone taking their belt off and throwing it. When you're excited and you've just won a national, international, world title, I might understand why you kind of let loose and just go crazy. Maybe it's because I referee purely at local levels. I don't think people get that type of excitement at a local level. But at that really high end, when you've accomplished something so fantastic that you can put on a show, I don't see a problem with it. But the vagueness of respectful manner is my bigger issue, as opposed to putting the belt on the floor. I actually think that's a fair enough rule. And then secondly, conduct that may be harmful to the integrity of the sport. I think that a lot of referees might have a different idea of what that is, and I hope that we get a little bit more clarity on some framework of things that they're looking for, so that there aren't people just making random calls on what they think is good for the integrity of the sport, if that makes sense. So I definitely would love to see some more information on what they mean regarding that. Getting rid of your belt, fine, I can live with that. I don't think I need to argue that one too much. The vagueness around the rest of it, I think, is a little problem. And again, I kind of have that opinion a little bit from my football watching. Is like, you know, a lot of the times they make a big play, they celebrate, next day they're getting a fine for what for what wasn't a big deal as far as the celebration goes. So I think that one's a little bit of a slippery slope. And the other thing is, like, it doesn't necessarily say what the impact is. Are people going to be is their last lift going to be disqualified? Are they just going to get a warning for future meets? I would hate for a world where someone sets a record and they drop their belt out of excitement, and then we take a lift and a record away from them. That wouldn't feel great to me. So, or you know, they scream out, "Let's go," and you know, maybe they even swear, "Let's effing go." I still don't want to be taking away a record for someone for doing something like that. So hopefully that isn't too crazy. Again, okay, so this one right here, this is kind of higher level stuff. Most people won't run into this. The jury may utilize instant replay technology as an official tool to review lifts during IPF sanctioned competitions. 99.9% of lifters probably aren't going to experience this, but that is there for the judges if they need to review lifts. I think that will be close to everything that... No, we definitely have some more here. No, that's going to be everything that affects the athletes. Like, this one kind of gives... this is where I talked about these are more referee-based rule changes. This is a rule that allows for more referees from specific countries to get sent to international meets. So overall, those are kind of the important ones. I'd say with most people being impacted by this one, the respectful manner, refraining from discarding their belt on the floor, and any conduct that may be harmful to the integrity of the sport, that one was certainly a problem. Let's make this a little quicker. The deadlifting rule, shoulder girdle behind the parallel bar line, that one is a good rule. And the chain rule, I think, is probably the biggest. Yeah, this rule right here, I like that change. And you know, the chain rule, don't necessarily like it, but it is what it is. People are going to have to adjust. The thrust, the upper body thrust, definitely a big deal. Definitely going to have to get that one figured out. And then finally, the thumbless grip. Okay. Hate to see the thumbless grip go, but that is the way of the road. That is the decision they decided to make. Other than that, I think we should be able to figure everything else out. If you made it to the end of the video and you liked what you saw here, be sure to like the video. I appreciate you guys checking out the channel. Other than that, you guys all have a good day, and I hope you have a great time at your next powerlifting meet.